Hello everyone and welcome to this video where I'm going to talk about my 3 biggest issues with The Witcher show on Netflix. But before I go any further, I gotta warn you that you will most likely see and hear all kinds of colossal spoilers, so be careful. Also, I just want to throw this in the beginning, I do not hate the show. It doesn't suck, Netflix didn't ruin The Witcher or anything of the sort, but with that said, and given the source material that this show is based on, I've got some problems with it. And we're not talking about minor things like how Triss looks or how Sir Ake is portrayed. Alright, enough lollygagging, let's get to the meat of things. Issue number 1, which is also the biggest of the 3, is what they decided to do with Geralt and Ciri's relationship in the show. And specifically that they removed all of it, literally. This decision, in my opinion, ruins 2 things. First, the overarching theme of destiny, which I'm sure you're well familiar with in the show.
Destiny.
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 Destiny. Destiny. Destiny.
Destiny.
Destiny.
And second, the ending of the last episode. So, in the book, called Sword of Destiny, where these events take place, there is just as much talk of destiny as there is in the Netflix version. However, the whole point of it, ultimately, is to show that the simple human connection between Geralt and Ciri, you know, that sweet, likable and relatable father and daughter relationship, which they quickly develop in Brokilon Forest, transcends destiny and goes beyond all the supernatural talk.
Damn it! 2 out of 3!
Out of the question.
Geralt himself even says at one point that destiny alone is not enough to create true bonds between people. Now, in the show, they just meet in the end because they are destined to be together, and that's really it. But in the books, there truly is something more. And by the way, that's where the name of the last episode is supposed to come from. That something more is built up when Geralt meets Ciri in Brokilon. Without even knowing who she is, actually, at first. We see him carrying her around on his back, bantering and arguing, later on telling her stories before she falls asleep, she then drawing morals from them. Then after they leave Brokilon, you have their adventure, if I may call it this way, and Ermion noticing how Ciri behaves around Geralt, and finally their unwilling separation and their accidental reunion when the two of them decide never to be apart anymore. So all of this is crucial if you want to invoke some real emotion in the audience during that final scene. Now, the show has made quite a few changes to the source material, some of which, admittedly, I didn't like a lot, such as making Fringilla and Kair a little more evil than they should be, but at least there's something going on there, and I'm willing to give it a shot, I'm willing to see what they will do with it in the future. In the case of Ciri and Geralt, however, I think there's literally nothing good that can come out of making that decision. Yes, they can add new scenes in the following seasons between the two of them, developing their relationship and so on, but I don't understand how removing the ones from the Sword of Destiny book help anything. Okay, I suppose now's the time to address the producer's comment on Twitter in response to why they decided to remove those parts. So she said that in order to do it the way it was, they would have had to introduce Ciri in Season 2 at the earliest. Now that makes absolutely no sense, because the removed scenes of Ciri take place before her events of Season 1, before the fall of Sintra even, which chronologically happens in Episode 7 out of 8. So how does showing something that happens earlier than Episode 7 means that we can't have Ciri at all in the whole season? But hold on a moment, I think there may be some sense in that tweet. And what I think she's actually trying to say is that if they included the meeting between Geralt and Ciri, there will not be enough time left in the season to tell the story which they wanted to tell after the fall of Sintra. Okay, here's how it goes in the books. Ciri meets Geralt in Brokilon, they have their whole adventure, then Sintra falls, and then they reunite. But what Netflix wants to show is Sintra falls, Ciri escapes and goes to the refugee camp, potentially spoils the plot of future seasons,
I don't eat rat.
then goes to Brokilon, stays there for a while, then is taken by the evil Doppler, who fails and ties her to a tree while trying to kill Kair, but fails at that too and escapes, and then Ciri escapes as well and meets the woman who can't pronounce Skellige, and then she reunites with Geralt. And by the way, mostly none of that is in the books. So essentially, there is no time to tell anything before the events they included, and it does in a way make sense. However, in my opinion, that's a poor choice. A very poor one. They replaced what is probably the best part with Ciri in the book with the most pointless subplot in the entire show. You can basically remove everything from Ciri's story in the show between the escape from the camp and the meeting with the woman who can't pronounce Skellige, and hardly anything would change. Actually, when I think about it, the only plausible explanation I can think of is that the actress who plays Ciri is just too old for some of those scenes from the books. In there she was 10, 11 at most, basically a kid, and the actress is 17 if I'm not mistaken. Although she is supposed to be 12 in the show, they actually say it.
I've been away 12 years and I'd planned on staying that way.
So not that far off, but I still think she'll probably look too old for some of those moments. In fact, someone commented, was it Cynthia? That fake Ciri would have made for a better real Ciri than the real Ciri. And it's kind of true, at least when it comes to her age. Also, I know that the author of the books was allegedly involved in the production of the show, and I'm not denying it, but I simply find it hard to believe that he would be okay with putting the Sword of Destiny book on TV and removing arguably the most important part of it, the very place where the words Sword of Destiny are actually used. But I talked enough. Let's move on to issue number 2, and I'll try to be brief. So my second issue are the Dryads of Brokilon. That is somewhat related to the first, in that their story is part of the same chapter where Geralt and Ciri's relationship develops, but removing Geralt from the forest didn't mean they have to do the Dryads such a disservice. And once again, the issue runs deep here. It's not about Eithne not having hair and eyes like molten silver, or them not using bows. It's that they took everything that makes the Dryads interesting and memorable, and just like Geralt and Ciri, they basically removed it. To say that the Dryads in the show are a shadow of their book selves, I suppose, is an understatement. They have been reduced to a tribe of women who live in the forest and have this water which they give to anyone who enters, and if that person's intentions aren't pure, they die or something?
All newcomers to the forest must drink the waters. If they bear ill intent towards Brokilon, they die.
But then evil Doppler Ermion shows up and nobody thinks to give him the water? Hey Eithne, let him drink the damn water. Doesn't he look suspicious to you? They were so interesting in the books. Their origin, who they are, what they are, their beliefs, their politics, well, if you can call their relations with humans politics, how they reproduce, the whole thing about natural Dryads versus converted Dryads, the incredibly touching and rather sad story of Mona, who remembered her true name, and of course you had Eithne's philosophical discussions with Geralt. It was all great stuff. We joke about how the Dryads don't look right, but the truth is that all the bows and molten silver in the world won't make up for what's lacking here. So perhaps they could have done something with them, maybe shorten the Doppler plot and expand on what makes them great in the books. Okay, now that I mentioned philosophical discussions actually, let me briefly talk about something else before I move on to number 3. Another regret I have is the reduction of Geralt's screen time and the amount of his dialogue. He has so much more in the books in relation to all other characters, and on Netflix he tends to get overshadowed by Yennefer a little bit. I don't know what the following seasons will do, but the first 2 books, on which the first season is based, are the most Geralt-centric books from the whole series.
You're a vile, two-faced, four-tongued viper.
Oh, Geralt. Shame you didn't talk that way when we
The middle ones give Ciri a good amount of attention as well, and the final books are very much about her. Of course, he is still present, but I just worry about his involvement in the following seasons. I guess we'll have to wait and see. And finally, we come to number 3. I'm not sure how to call it exactly. Let's say the one-sided black and white portrayal of various problems in the world. See, a very strong theme in the Witcher books is that everything has two sides. Almost nothing is perfectly good or bad. Rarely there's a clear correct course of action, and so on and so forth. The Witcher games actually capture that perfectly. Take the third one, for example. No matter who ends up ruling over the north in the end, it's never perfect. There are always upsides and downsides and sacrifices that have to be made. The same is true for many choices and consequences as well. It's even true for your romance options, and similar things can be said about pretty much every character too. And so, what bothered me in the show, at least in the first season, I suppose this one could be rectified in the following ones, but still, it was the fact that elves, for example, were portrayed as innocent victims and humans as sadistic aggressors.
Perhaps our esteemed guest would like to entertain us with how he slayed the elves at the edge of the world.
They laughed when they did it. Killing, raping. They laughed the hardest when they were swinging babies from their legs, smashing their heads in.
Nilfgaard is presented as this evil empire who wants to spread its gospel and ideology throughout the north.
And we will spread his supremacy all through the kingdoms, whether they deserve it or not.
Gather the men.
And you either accept it or get conquered. It's even implied that women in general are the underdogs of society in a way.
And let's face it, you're a girl. So count yourself lucky.
And in the books, it's a little more balanced. Bad things happen to elves, it's true, but they're not saints either. Nilfgaard isn't that evil, women are doing no worse than men for the most part, and so on. Once again, out of the 3 issues, this one is the easiest to fix, and I hope we do see that in the following seasons. Alright, with that I think we're done. If you'd like to know my thoughts about the show in more detail, you can have a look at my review series, the link to which is down in the description. But before that, tell me what you thought of everything I talked about, and if you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like. So, thank you very much for watching, special thanks to my supporters on Patreon and YouTube members, and until the next video, stay tuned and be good.
Does the good book contain an answer to every question?
For kingdom and glory!
Ike!
Each and every query, without exception.
What does it prescribe a mother betrayed by her son? Tender forgiveness or unflinching firmness?
A child who doth with waywardness defy his mother and father deserveth discipline most severe. Strike him thus heartily, unless thine heart stilleth thy hand.
But one could interpret that any way one wishes.
Dear.
To thine own self be judge and ruler, spoke the prophet Lebioda.
I'm afraid I must take my leave.
For thou alone shalt answer for thine deeds before thee.
There's a certain wisdom to those words.